I'm Dr. Eben Alexander. I'm a neurosurgeon, and for most of my life, I believed that the mind was just a product of the brain. But in 2008, something happened to me that changed everything. I fell into a coma for 7 days, and during that time, I experienced something that was impossible to explain, something that showed me the truth about life, death, and what comes after. What I saw and felt completely blew my mind. Let me tell you what happened. I was a scientist, a man of logic and reason. I had spent my life studying the brain, understanding its every function, and believing that consciousness was nothing more than the result of electrical activity in the brain. But when I fell ill in 2008, all of that was about to be tested in a way I could never have imagined. It started with a headache, a strange feeling of confusion, and within hours, I was losing control of my body. I was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis, a rare and deadly infection of the brain, and I slipped into a coma. The doctors told my family that I might not make it, that my chances of survival were slim. But the truth is, the moment I lost consciousness, I began a journey unlike anything I could have prepared for. For 7 days, my brain was completely inactive. My body was in the hands of doctors, but my mind was somewhere else. I couldn't feel the pain or the fear. I was no longer trapped in my body or in the hospital room. I was in a completely different place, one that was beyond the limits of anything I had ever studied or understood. What happened in that coma would change everything I thought I knew about life and death. And it started with a simple feeling, a feeling of being pulled into a world of light, love, and unimaginable beauty. As I drifted further into the coma, I had no idea what was happening to my body or what the doctors were doing to save me. I was completely unconscious, and yet I found myself in a place that was unlike anything I had ever known. There was no longer a hospital room, no beeping monitors, no sterile white walls. Instead, I was surrounded by a darkness, at first an unsettling void. But it wasn't empty. It felt alive, almost as if the darkness itself was a kind of waiting room, a threshold between this world and something beyond. Then, as if I had crossed some unseen barrier, everything shifted. Out of the darkness came a brilliant, radiant light. It wasn't just light, though. It was a warmth that washed over me, a sense of love that filled me completely. It was as if the light was alive, reaching out to embrace me, offering me comfort and peace. There were no words to describe it, no way to convey the depth of this feeling. It was as if I had been enveloped in the purest, most unconditional love I had ever known. And then came the sounds. At first, they were faint, distant, like whispers just beyond reach. But they grew clearer, and with them came a sense of wonder, as though the very air was filled with the music of the universe. There were no words spoken, but the sounds seemed to communicate directly with me in a way that went far beyond language. I felt like I was part of something vast, something eternal, something that transcended time and space. But it wasn't just the light and the sounds. I began to notice other things, figures, or rather, beings that seemed to be part of this world of light. They weren't like people, not in any way I had ever seen before. They were not physical beings, but rather shapes, forms made of light and energy. They moved with grace, and their presence was overwhelming, but not in a way that caused fear. They exuded a sense of calm and wisdom. I felt no judgment, no fear, only love and acceptance. It was as though they were waiting for me, as though they had known me for eternity. At that moment, I realized that I wasn't alone in this place. One of the beings seemed to step forward, and I felt an immediate connection, a sense of recognition, as if I had known this being for a long time. There was no name, no need for introductions. The connection was instant, telepathic. The being didn't speak, but I understood its thoughts, its intentions, as clearly as if it had spoken aloud. It was not a being of this world, yet somehow it felt familiar, comforting, like an old friend or a long-lost relative. It was guiding me, showing me something important. What followed was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. I was taken on a journey through what I can only describe as the most beautiful, serene landscape I had ever seen. The scenery was otherworldly. There were vast fields of vibrant colors, rich hues of blues and purples, and golden light that bathed everything in its glow. It wasn't like anything I had ever seen on Earth. The colors were more vivid, more alive. The air was filled with a sense of purity and beauty that I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I was moving through this landscape, but I wasn't walking. I was gliding, floating, almost as if I were weightless. There was no sense of time. There was no sense of rush. Everything was perfect, as though I had all the time in the world to explore this place of eternal peace. I could feel the vastness of this world, stretching out beyond what I could see. It was a place of pure, unfiltered beauty. There were fields and flowers that seemed to bloom as I passed by, colors that shimmered in ways that words cannot describe. The very ground beneath me seemed to hum with life. I had never experienced anything like it before, and yet in some way, it felt familiar, as though I had always been part of it, always connected to it. As I floated through this incredible landscape, I began to realize that I wasn't just a passive observer. There was something, or someone leading me, guiding me through this surreal world. It wasn't immediately clear who or what this being was, but I felt an undeniable presence, benevolent, wise, and filled with love. The being wasn't like anything I had ever seen in the physical world. It was a human, not in the way we think of humans, but it felt deeply familiar, like an old friend or a wise mentor who had been with me all along, even though I had no memory of meeting it before. It's hard to describe the feeling of recognition that washed over me. There were no words exchanged, but somehow I knew this being was guiding me towards something crucial. It wasn't simply showing me the beauty of this realm. It was showing me a deeper truth. I felt its calm, its compassion, and its profound understanding. This being had no need for language. The connection between us was entirely telepathic. Thoughts and emotions passed between us like waves in the ocean, without interruption. I didn't need to ask questions. Somehow, I just knew things. I understood concepts, ideas, and emotions without any words at all. It was as if everything I had ever wondered about was suddenly clear. And as we moved deeper into this ethereal landscape, I began to see images, flashes of things from my life, but they weren't in the way I had expected. It wasn't just a series of memories, like you might think of in a typical life review. No, it was something far more profound. It was as if I was seeing not only my life, but also the deeper connections between all things. How we are all linked together. How each of our actions ripples out into the universe, affecting others in ways we can never fully comprehend. The being guiding me seemed to want me to understand this. I was shown the importance of love, of kindness, of connection. Every single action, every word spoken, every feeling shared had a ripple effect. I saw how love was the thread that bound everything together, how it connected all living things in ways that went far beyond what we see with our eyes. There was no separation, no isolation. It was all connected. Human beings, nature, the universe. The sense of oneness was overwhelming. I realized in that moment that everything I had believed about life, about consciousness, and about the nature of reality was only a small piece of a much larger puzzle. But it wasn't just about the connections between us here on Earth. I was also shown glimpses of something more profound, an understanding of death and what comes after. The being that was guiding me communicated that death was not the end, that it was merely another transition, a step into a greater understanding. There was no fear in this message, no sense of finality. Death, I learned, was not something to be feared. It was part of the eternal flow of existence, a flow that continued long after our physical bodies passed away. As this message began to settle within me, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, of comfort. I wasn't alone in this journey. There were others, beings, angels, spirits that I couldn't see clearly, but whose presence I could feel. Their energy was supportive, comforting, and filled with love. I felt as though I was part of a vast, spiritual family. It wasn't just about me. It was about the collective. I was part of something much larger than myself. And I wasn't just learning lessons for myself. I was being shown something that I needed to share with others when I returned. I could feel that my time in this place was not meant to last forever. I wasn't meant to stay here. As I continued to float through this magnificent realm, the being guiding me began to show me something that completely changed my understanding of life and death. I was shown a panoramic view of existence, a kind of vast, eternal tapestry that connected all things. The more I observed, the more I understood. I saw how everything, every life, every soul was part of a greater plan, a cosmic flow that stretched across time and space. It wasn't just about individual lives, but the interwoven connections between them. It was as if everything in the universe had a purpose, a role to play, and that we were all moving towards something greater. I began to understand that life on Earth, with all its struggles and challenges, was part of a much bigger picture. The hardships, the joys, the experiences we go through, they all have meaning, even when we can't see it in the moment. The being showed me that our earthly lives are about growth, learning, and evolving towards something deeper. It's not about accumulating wealth or achieving fame, but about learning to love, to connect, and to live in harmony with each other and the universe around us. The most powerful revelation I received, however, was about the nature of consciousness. I had spent my career studying the brain, convinced that consciousness was simply a byproduct of brain activity. But in this place, I saw that consciousness doesn't come from the brain at all. It exists independently beyond the physical body, and it is eternal. The brain, I realized, is merely a filter, a tool through which consciousness experiences the physical world. When the body dies, consciousness continues. It transcends the physical realm, unbound by time and space. I was also shown glimpses of my own life. Moments that I had long forgotten, interactions with people I had once known, and connections I had made. It wasn't a life review in the traditional sense, but something far more profound. I saw how every action, every word, every thought had ripples that extended far beyond what I could have ever imagined. Every act of kindness, every moment of love, no matter how small, had meaning. The beings around me showed me that the essence of life is not in what we achieve, but in how we love and how we treat others. It was in this moment that I realized the true nature of death. It wasn't something to fear, but a transition, an opening to a deeper, more expansive existence. The beings around me communicated that death was not an end, but rather a doorway into a greater reality. And as I absorbed this knowledge, I understood that this experience, this journey, wasn't just for me. I was meant to share this wisdom with others, to help them understand that life is not just about physical existence. We are not our bodies, and death is not the end. We are eternal beings, and our journey continues long after we leave this world. Just as I was beginning to grasp these profound truths about life, love, and consciousness, something unexpected happened. Suddenly, the serene beauty of the realm I was in began to fade. The warm light that had been surrounding me started to dim, and the peaceful presence of the beings began to withdraw. I felt a sense of emptiness, an unsettling chill that crept into my being. It was as if the very fabric of this world was unraveling, leaving me in a place of darkness and uncertainty. I was pulled downward fast. The once gentle flow of light around me became a rapid descent. I felt weightless, like I was falling, spiraling into an abyss. I was surrounded by shadows, swirling masses of energy that seemed to pull at me, trying to consume me. There were no forms, no figures, just an overwhelming sense of terror, a void that stretched out infinitely. For the first time in this experience, I felt completely alone, vulnerable, and terrified. The fear wasn't like anything I had felt before. It wasn't just a mental fear, but something deep in my soul. I could feel myself being pulled away from everything I had known. The warmth, the love, the understanding. It was as if I was slipping away from the light and plunging into a place of cold emptiness. The sense of isolation was suffocating, and for a brief moment I thought I might be lost forever. But then, as quickly as it began, the descent stopped. I was not lost. A powerful force, stronger than anything I had ever known, pulled me back toward the light. The warmth enveloped me once again, and the sense of love and peace returned. The darkness was gone, but the fear it left behind was real, and it took a moment for me to fully process what had just happened. I realized that what I had just experienced wasn't just a random shift in the landscape. It was a warning, a reminder that even in the afterlife, there are choices to be made, paths to follow. I had momentarily lost my connection to the light, to the love that surrounded me, and that fear was the consequence. It wasn't a punishment, but a lesson. It showed me that darkness can always be overcome by choosing to return to the light, by choosing love over fear. After that moment of fear, I was pulled back into the light, into the overwhelming sense of love and peace I had felt earlier. But this time, the lesson was clear. Love is the force that binds everything together, and the light was always there for me to return to. I wasn't alone. The beings around me, the guide who had been with me throughout this journey, seemed to be silently reassuring me, showing me that no matter how far I might stray into darkness, love would always pull me back. As I floated in this radiant space, I began to understand the significance of what I had learned. The beings around me weren't just guiding me. They were part of a much larger cosmic family. They were a reflection of the divine, a representation of the deep interconnectedness of all beings. I wasn't just learning for myself. I was being shown something that I needed to share with the world. There was an urgency to it now, a feeling that I had been entrusted with a message that could change everything. The universe, the being communicated to me, is governed by love. And this love wasn't just about human connections. It was the very foundation of everything. Love was not a fleeting feeling or a human construct. It was the universal force that connected everything in existence, that permeated every molecule and every being. It wasn't just a concept. It was the underlying truth of the universe itself. And then, just as quickly as it had all begun, I started to feel a shift, a pulling sensation, as though the very fabric of this realm was starting to unravel. I could feel myself being drawn back to the world I had known. I didn't want to leave. The peace and love I had experienced were unlike anything I had ever known. But as the light around me began to fade, I knew my journey had come to an end. The beings, my guide, all began to withdraw. I was now being pulled back to my body, back to the physical world, and though I didn't want to leave, I knew it was time. The last thing I remember before I was fully pulled out of this realm was the powerful message I had received. You are loved. You are never alone. And the light, the love, is always with you. I awoke in the hospital bed, confused and disoriented. My body felt weak, fragile, but my mind was racing. What had just happened? I had been gone for 7 days, but the experience felt like a lifetime. The doctors had given up hope, and yet here I was alive. The NDE had changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and consciousness. In the days that followed, as I recovered from the illness, the lessons of my journey became clearer. I realized that consciousness is not limited to the brain. It exists beyond the physical realm, and when the body dies, consciousness continues eternally. I also understood that love is the most powerful force in the universe. It transcends time and space. It connects all beings, all souls, and is the very essence of existence. The darkness I had experienced during my descent was not a punishment or a place of eternal suffering. It was a reminder that fear and negativity can separate us from the light, but the light is always there to return to. The beings who guided me, the eternal love that I felt, had shown me that death is not an end. It is a transition to a new understanding, to a deeper connection with the universe and all of existence. When I returned to my life as a neurosurgeon, I knew I couldn't keep this experience to myself. I had been shown something too profound, too important to ignore. It wasn't just about my journey. It was about sharing the truth of what I had learned with others. That life is eternal, that love is the most powerful force, and that we are all part of something far greater than we could ever fully understand. I may have been a scientist, a man of reason before my coma, but now, I am someone who knows that there is so much more to existence than we can ever see or comprehend in our earthly lives. Our consciousness, our souls, are eternal, and love is the force that binds it all together.